Hello, 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 everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is Viperstrike 95, and welcome to our Sunday National Park series here. And today we're here to cover park number 18 of our series. And this national park is one of the more striking and beautiful parks in the country, Grand Teton National Park. Now, if you guys don't know about Grand Teton, this is one of the two national parks here in Wyoming. The other national park here in the state, of course, is Yellowstone, but Yellowstone's also into Idaho and Montana. But this one is the national park that's all of it is in Wyoming. So today we'll be doing a really beautiful and stunning flight over Grand Teton. We'll be exploring pretty much what makes this national park truly special. So we're here today here at Logan Airport in Logan, Utah. The city that's known for Utah State University, but also we can find the mountain peaks here in beautiful Utah, of course. So I hope you guys have a great weekend. I hope you guys are having a great weekend and enjoying your time with everything going on. So before we get started, I do want to say hello to everyone and all the lurkers. I hope you're all having a great day. Here's our route for today, and here's our server. So we have all this here. So our flight plan this morning, by the way, is this. So we'll start here in Logan. We'll make our way to our first waypoint here, and we'll visit Wyoming Peak, technically the tallest peak in the state, Wyoming Peak. We'll make our way down through the valley into Bridger Teton Forest, and we'll make our way over to our first stop at Alpine Airport. 46 uniform. Then from there, we'll travel into Grand Teton National Park. We'll start here. We'll make our way through Moose Creek Ranch over to Horsetop Mountain, Mount Bannon. We'll have a mountain peak landing here at Grand Teton. Then from there, we'll travel through Cascade Canyon, fly around this area, then go through Cascade Canyon. We'll make a stop at Inspiration Point. Right near Jenny Lake, the famous lake in the park. We'll continue moving forward north. As we fly through the mountainside, we'll get to Lay Lake, make up through Mount Moran, fly around the peak there, go through Crow's Nest, Moose Mountain, then we'll get back to Jackson Lake, do Coulter Bar Village. Then we'll visit the famous J.P. Cunningham Cabin. This is a very famous cabin, of course, that is used for a lot of and this cabin is well known for being a very favorite shot here for a lot of the people into Grand Teton. Then we'll go through the valley, and then of course we're going to visit the very famous T.A. Moulton Barn. And of course, the T.A. Moulton Barn is the famous barn that you see all the time for pictures at Grand Teton. It's the barn you always see in pictures. It's a very photogenic region. If you guys want me to, we'll get a really great picture of this of the barn. We'll get you a really great picture. And we'll get you a great picture here with the Grand Teton Mountains. You guys are going to absolutely love it here. So that is what we're going to do. And then finally, we'll head our way over through Grand Teton Scenic Drive Start. We'll actually go through here, past Blacktail Butte, and we'll make our way to our last stop at Jackson Hole Airport. Now, fun fact for you guys that don't know this, this is the only airport that's directly in a national park. It's the only commercial airport in a national park. What that means is when they built it, it wasn't part of the national park system just yet, but when Grand Teton expanded, the airport got sucked into the national park. So as a result, yeah, Grand Teton is a very important airport in Wyoming. It's actually Wyoming's busiest airport, believe it or not. So that is what we're going to do today. So we're going to take this one Savage Norton today, a really nice bush aircraft and a very purpose-built plane for these type of flights. So that is what we're going to do. We're getting nearly everything else ready, of course. So let's go ahead and get this plane started. Thankfully, this is a pretty simple plane to get up and going. So here we go. And that is our plane starting. So that is what we're going to do this morning. So there we go. So for our first leg this morning, of course, we'll be doing our first leg of a trip. Technically, our max altitude, 13,500 feet, will be our highest elevation for all complete trip. But for the first leg, we can fly up to 11,000 feet. So we're going to set this here, of course. Our heading's technically 38-degree heading. And we'll be at 11,000 feet. We're going to arm the autopilot so we can arm it when we take off. But yeah, the scenery this morning should be absolutely gorgeous. The Wyoming scenery, of course. And we're going to take off. And we're off. Nice. And we're going to climb up to 11,000 feet. So we're going to say goodbye to Logan, Utah. We're going to make our way further up. Absolutely gorgeous scenery in this part. This is part of the Wasatch Valley here in Utah. And that pretty much splits the Wasatch Range. Heads all the way down from the top of Wyoming, and it goes all the way down through Utah. But we're in the tail end of that Wasatch Range, which goes all the way from Birmingham City all the way down through the Salt Lake City area. And it goes all the way down to like Neffy is the Wasatch Valley Range. So we're right now entering into the peaks of Wyoming. But man, what a gorgeous day. What an absolutely gorgeous day to visit for our game day flight. So beautiful trip. So we'll make our way down to Grand Teton sooner than later, of course. But yeah, we're doing pretty decently. We're climbing pretty high. We're climbing around 1,300 feet a minute. So we're going to climb pretty... But yeah, this series is absolutely gorgeous here, this part of the month. So we're going to climb up to around 11,000. We'll start talking about Grand Teton, of course. But before we start talking about Grand Teton National Park, and before we start talking about Teton, we're going to go ahead and talk about some of the other stuff that's been going on around this time. For sports-related stuff, the MLS season started last night, was the MLS. So Major League Soccer has finally started here in the States. There were some pretty interesting games, but Nashville SC beat New England FC 4-1. A pretty big win for Nashville. So big win for the MLS's Nashville SC. There was some pretty good games last night. That was a pretty fun one, but the best game of last night was Los Angeles FC versus Inter Miami. Big matchup between Messi's Inter Miami and Son Heung-min's LAFC, and it was a 3-0 win at the LA Coliseum. It attracted 75,000 people last night, which was absolutely insane for an MLS match. It was a historic attendance record for the MLS. 75,673 fans, the highest attended MLS opening game in MLS opening weekend history. So, big win for LAFC, a big win for them, and it wasn't really close. They absolutely took command of that game. Took advantage of all the Inter's mistakes. Some of the other games that happened yesterday, of course, would be in Spain. It was a big Atletico Madrid beat Espanyol 4-2, or Paracos. The big game, big upset yesterday out of Spain was Osasuna beating Real Madrid at home. A massive home win for Osasuna. That was a much needed win for them. A massive win for them, and that was a much needed home victory. A much needed home victory, though, for Osasuna to get back to the top flight of Spain. Then in France, AS Monaco beat Lens, and combine that with PSG's win. Lens fell to second in the standings, and PSG overtake them, which was a pretty big loss for Lens. And of course, in Italy, Como beat Juventus for the first time in 73 years, 2-0. Big wins for some of the big clubs, of course. But today, of course, is a big day here for soccer, of course. The Crystal Forest and Liverpool playing today, but also a little bit later, the North London Derby, Spurs and Arsenal. This should be a big one. Spurs-Arsenal is a big one. So I think it should be a massive game, and of course, that's a huge game today. It's probably the biggest match this week. Villarreal and Valencia are also playing as well. So definitely some pretty big games, but the North London Derby is the eye on the focus today, of course. So we now just climbed to 11,000 feet. We finally made our way to the top of Grand Teton, to the top of the mountains, of course. Beautiful scenery here from this part of Utah, of course. So we finally made it to 124 knots. So I hope you guys are having a good weekend so far and enjoying your time, obviously. So of course, Murph also planned out his streams for next week. He'll continue his landmark series on tomorrow. He'll be doing Stonehenge, which is in Britain, of course, in the west end of Britain. So he'll be planning doing that tomorrow. So it should be a very interesting trip. So pretty big stuff, of course, going on with all sorts of stuff in the community. So here it is, guys, some bit of notes. This is Grand Teton National Park here in Wyoming. Grand Teton, of course, this national park here in northwest Wyoming is about 310,000 acres and includes the major peaks of the 40-mile-long Teton Range, as well as the northern sections of the valley known as Jackson Hole. And this national park is just only 10 miles south of the more famous Yellowstone National Park. The history of Grand Teton takes back to over 11,000 years ago, and Europeans first got into the region in the early 19th century when they encountered the Shoshone people. And this area became popular for a lot of the fur trading expeditions, and including the beaver pelt trade. Of course, one of the things Grand Teton is most famous for is, of course, the name of the national park actually came from the tallest mountain in the range, Grand Teton itself. And it rises about 13,375 feet tall, and it rises more than 7,000 feet above Jackson Hole. It features numerous lakes, including the 15-mile-long Jackson Lake. Of course, this beautiful national park has almost pristine ecosystem, and it has basically the same species of flora and fauna since prehistoric times, including more than 1,000 species of vascular plants, dozens species of mammals, 300 species of birds, and more than a few species of fish, reptiles, and amphibians. And of course, this national park is a very popular destination for mountaineering, hiking, fishing, and recreation. It's a very popular national park for outdoorsmen, of course. There's over more than 1,000 drive-in campsites and more than 200 miles of hiking trails that provide access to backcountry camping. Known for world-renowned trout fishing, this park is one of the few places to catch the Snake River fine-spotted cutthroat trout. So, really cool stuff. Grand Teton, lots of really neat plants and animals you can find in this park. There's tons of things this park is very famous for. So the history of the Grand Teton National Park, Paleo-Indian presence has been around in this area for more than 11,000 years. The Jackson Hole Valley climate at that time was actually colder and more alpine than the semi-arid climate found today. And the first humans were migratory hunter-gatherers who spent the summers in Jackson Hole and winter in the valleys of the Teton west of the range. And of course, they found plenty of obsidian tools and all that. From 11,000 years ago to 500 years ago, there was little evidence in the change of the migratory pattern among the Native American groups in the region, and there is no indication of any permanent human settlement in the region. So this was pretty much migratory. Now, of course, when white American colonists entered the region for the first time during the 19th century, they encountered the eastern tribes of the Shoshone people. And most of those people that lived in the mountain vastness of the Great Yellowstone continued to be pedestrian, while other groups of the Shoshone resided in the lower elevations. Now, of course, what built a lot of this area was in the 19th century was fur. Of course, the Lewis and Clark expedition passed well north of the Grand Teton region. During their return trip, however, John Colder was given an early discharge so he can join two fur trappers who were heading west in search of beaver pelts. And during the winter of 1807-08, Colder passed through Jackson Hole and became the first Caucasian to see the Teton Range. And he produced a map. William Clark produced a map with Coulter about the Grand Teton region. And John Coulter was considered to be the first mountain man, and like those, came to Jackson Hole for the next 30 years for fur trapping. You see, at the time, beaver pelts were extremely valuable, especially for those in Europe for the wealthy. And it makes sense because beaver pelt was extremely valuable because and it's because the fur was used to make hats, and the beaver hats became very much a fashionable part of Europe throughout the 19th century. beaver. In fact, beaver pelt was so important that many wars were even fought over beaver pelts. So, of course, one very big part of it, obviously, then from the 1820s, the Rocky Mountain Fur Company included those of Jedediah Smith, William Sublette, and David Edward Jackson. They did a lot of stuff here in the Teton region. However, as demand for beaver fur declined, American fur trading companies folded. However, individual mountain men continued to trap beaver until 1840. Then, of course, from 1840 to 1860, Jackson Hole and the Teton Range were generally devoid of all but the small populations of Native Americans that had been there. So, a lot of it, of course, was due to disease and all that, which has been a pretty big problem historically with So, of course, afterwards, all this was, of course, another very important thing that happened in the region. You see, to the north of Jackson Hole, Yellowstone National Park was already been established back in 1872, and by the close of the 19th century, conservationists want to expand the boundaries of Yellowstone to at least include the mountain range, at least in the Teton Range. Of course, adding on to that, but Jackson Hole people were actually opposed to the expansion of Yellowstone. Jackson Hole residents were opposed to expansion of Yellowstone, but instead they were more in favor of its own separate national park that would include the Teton Range. And eventually, after congressional approval, Grand Teton National Park, Calvin Coolidge signed an executive order to build Grand Teton National Park on February 26, 1929. So that's when the park officially became official, becoming its own national park rather than an expansion of Yellowstone. Of course, Rockefeller, of course, much of the property expansions that built Grand Teton were actually purchased by John D. Rockefeller Jr., and he became much more invested in it when he and his wife visited the region in the 1920s, and he purchased a lot of the land through the Snake River Land Company, which would later then turn it into the National Park Service. Of course, this plan was once revealed to the residents in 1930 with strong disapproval. However, eventually in 1943, Roosevelt created Jackson Hole National Monument using the land donated from the land company, and eventually after World War II, the public actually turned more popular with the park, and eventually the National Monument merged into Grand Teton National Park in 1950 with all the property here to this day. And in recognition of all his service, John D. Rockefeller has his own parkway named after him. So that concludes the history of Grand Teton National Park and the history of one of the most underrated parks in the United States. So we'll get there pretty much closer. But yeah, Grand Teton, a really great national park. we're going to go ahead and get this further, of course. So I hope you guys like that. For more about the slides, if you'd like this information. So we'll get there pretty soon, of course. There's a lot of really great stuff about Grand Teton. It's definitely a park I've had a lot of interest wanting to visit. And you're not going to find many more stunning, really beautiful parks than Grand Teton would be. So now I know a lot of you guys thinking about beavers, of course. So why do they use a lot of beavers and stuff during the old fur? The reason why beavers were really prized, of course, that's where a lot of beaver hats were made. But beavers were very popular for a lot of fur. In addition, beavers were actually used for not just their fur. Their meat was also eaten a lot, especially by Native Americans. They actually preferred its meat more than the other red meats due to its higher calorie and fat content. And the animals did remain plump in the winter. Their bones were used by tools by the old Native Americans. In Europe, the beaver to be part mammal and fish by the Catholic Church, so they were actually allowed to eat the scaly tail on meatless fries during Lent. So beaver tails were very popular. So they've been used for all sorts of things, and of course, their castoreum was used for a lot of medical purposes, and stuff too. So pretty interesting stuff about beavers, of course. So it's not just fur; people use the beavers for all sorts of other stuff too. So we'll be heading towards our valley, of course, in just about a few miles. Let's take a look outside of our scenery this morning. Beautiful landscapes here today. On our way over to, we should be able to see Wyoming Peak, actually. Believe it or not, Wyoming Peak is actually the tallest mountain in the Wyoming range. at around 11,383 feet. But it's not the tallest peak in the state. The tallest peak in the state is actually not even Grand Teton. If you want to look for the tallest peak in Wyoming, it's actually Gannett Peak, which is actually located east of where we're at. We can find Gannett Peak. And that's actually the tallest peak in Wyoming. So, pretty cool stuff. We'll be making our way here soon. So, let's go ahead and talk about another part about Grand Teton for this lake, and we'll continue talking more about it. So, in terms of park management and how the park was managed, of course, Grand Teton is actually one of the 10 most visited national parks in the U.S., with an annual average of 2.75 million visitors from 2007 to 2016. In 2016, the high was 3.27 million people. As of last year, as of 2022, 2.8 million people visited in 2022, which is a lot, actually. Grand Teton is one of the most visited national parks in the country. In terms of visitation numbers, let's see for a national park on the pick list. Wyoming, Grand Teton, National Park. Annual park visits. So looking at the stats. So recreational visits last year that they recorded this in 2024, 3.6 million people visited Grand Teton National Park, which is actually pretty crazy to think about. So yes, Grand Teton is actually one of our more visited national parks. Though not as much as Yellowstone, of course. But it is one of the more visited parks in the United States. So Grand Teton has actually had quite a few visitors. Grand Teton also has an average, of course, of 100 permanent and 180 seasonal employees, and they also manage 27 concession contracts to provide services like lodging, restaurants, mountaineering guides, and more. So lots of different people have managed this sort of stuff before. So very important national park in a very important area, of course. One interesting little tidbit about Grand Teton was that was during the expansion, of course. One of the more interesting things is that when Jackson Hole Monument was designed, and this was mainly talking about Jackson Hole Airport. And one of the interesting things about Jackson Hole Airport, as you guys don't know, was because when the National Monument was actually designated back in the day in 1930s, well, guess what was inside the National Monument? Jackson Hole Airport was inside of it. So when it eventually became part of a national park, and when the Monument and Park were combined, Jackson Hole Airport became the only commercial airport in the United States to be within an American national park. This would have some really interesting consequences because guess what? Because it was inside of an American national park, Jackson Hole Airport has some of the strictest noise abatement regulations of any airport in the United States. It has night flight curfews, overflight restrictions, with pilots having to be expected to approach and depart the airport along the east, south, or southwest flight corridors. So yes, this is a very strict national park. So, very important stuff. Of course, they've expanded this area quite a bit in the park management, but this is very important though. So, yes, that's why flying Jackson Hole, there's going to be some challenges, and that's why it's a very unique airport. If you ever get a chance to fly in Jackson Hole Airport, it's one of the very best airports in the country for seeing flying. So, of course, there is some unique geography. Grand Teton National Park is located within 310,000 acres of land here in the park. While Johnny Rockefeller Memorial Parkway includes 23,000 acres of its own. Believe it or not, the Teton Range is actually the youngest mountain range in all the Rockies. It's the youngest of all the range because it was formed pretty recently. 6 to 9 million years ago was when the Grand Teton Mountain Range was formed. And it runs roughly north to south with rises for the floor of Jackson Hole without any foothills along a 40-mile long by 79-mile wide mountain front. In addition to the 13,000-foot Mount Grand Teton, there are 9 peaks in the national park. They're well within 12,000 feet, including Mount Moran, which is actually the most prominent peak north of Cascade Canyon. And all that. Of course, there's one other defining feature of this park's geography. Jackson Hole, the 55-mile long by 6 to 13-mile wide valley, with an average elevation around 6,800 feet, at its lowest point near the center edge at 6,300 feet. And of course, that's Jackson Hole. And compared to the rest of it, it's contemporarily flat with only a modest increase from south to north, though there are a few isolated buttes. Blacktail Butte is particularly the more notable one here in the valley. So, very important stuff here, of course. And finally, most of the lakes in the rivers of the park are located at the base of the mountain range. In the northern section lies Jackson Lake, the largest lake of the park, around 15 miles long and 5 miles wide. Of course, there are other really well-known lakes. The most notable one, of course, is Jenny Lake, which is one of the most notable smaller lakes in the park, is Jenny Lake. And that's because this area is where you find tons of hiking trails all across Grand Teton. And of course, the Snake River runs north to south through the park. And Snake River is very popular for a lot of rafting and stuff. So, very cool stuff here in Grand Teton. Very neat area, lots of really stunning scenery, of course. So, very important stuff here. So we're about to head to another valley. So once we get near Wyoming Peak, we'll turn left. We can descend, we can keep it 11,000 feet, but we can descend to 10,500. So maybe we'll descend 500 feet. And we'll just go 500 feet per minute. So we'll just descend slowly. Megapercent. So we're about to reach Wyoming Peak, of course. If you guys want to know what this looks like without the snow and without, let's see what it looks like in a different time of the year. Let's go April. So this is what all this looks like in April, by the way. So yeah, it's still pretty stunning, of course. She still looks very stunning, of course. The mountain scenery. But I'd rather keep it to February, so let's keep it that way. So, it's a pretty stunning little scenery, of course, as we head our way to the Grand Tetons. So if you guys want to know the most visited national park, well, that's Great Smoky Mountains, by the way. Great Smoky Mountains is far and away the most visited national park. By a mile is the most visited national park. In 2024, 12 million people visited the Great Smokies, which is absolutely insane to think about so many people visiting Smoky Mountains National Park. So we're going to go ahead and turn to the left. So yeah, there's Wyoming Peak and all that. But yeah, you can see what all this looks like. This absolutely looks crazy up here. Yeah, what a stunning valley this is. Really gorgeous. So we'll fly around this area for another 38 nautical miles. We'll be making our way through this area, of course. We'll be making through this area, of course. So we'll head down this direction, of course. So we're going to continue on with the nurse slide here in our slideshow. Outside of geography is the geology, and yes, Grand Teton is a very interesting geological area. Grand Teton itself actually has some of the most ancient rocks found in any American national park. Some of them are dated back to almost 2.6 billion years old. Though all the rocks are believed to even exist here in the park, and many of them were formed between 4 to 2 billion years ago. So yes, despite the Grand Teton mountain range being one of the youngest in the Rockies, the rocks here are actually some of the oldest in any American park. One very important thing to note is that by the close of the Precambrian, this region was actually intermittently submerged under shallow seas, and for 500 million years, various types of sedimentary rocks were formed during this time period. Sandstone, shale, limestone, and dolomite were deposited during the Paleozoic era. And many of these sedimentary rocks have since eroded away from the mountain range. They are still evident around the northern, southern, and western flanks of the range, with one exception being sandstone at the cap of Mount Moran. From the end of the Mesozoic to present, the region went through a series of uplifts and erosion sequences. Commencing 66 million years ago, the Laramide orogeny was a period of mountain building and erosion in western North America to create the Rocky Mountains. But these are actually among the youngest of the Rockies, as this area only grew around between 9 to 6 million years ago. So, pretty important stuff here for the park as we head to the national park. In terms of the flora here, this national park is rich with flora and fauna. In terms of flora, there's around 100,000 species of vascular plants, and with an altitude range of over 7,000 feet, the park has a number of different ecological zones, including alpine tundra, Rocky Mountain subalpine zone, where spruce fir forests were dominant in the valley floor, in which a conifer deciduous forest zone occupies with bare soil with sagebrush. In addition, the wetlands near some lakes valley floor provide a lot of valley floor for a lot of different plants. And the range of altitude also affects which type of plant species found here. In the alpine zone above the tree line, tundra conditions prevailed, and in this treeless region, you can find grass, wildflower, moss, and lichen. Of course, in subalpine zone, which lies in the base of the mountains, you can find white bark pine, the really rare and threatened white bark pine, lumber pine, subalpine fir, and Engelmann spruce are dominant. In the valley floor, lodgepole pine is the most common, but you can find Douglas fir and Bruce spruce in this area, along with aspen, alder, and willow are more around the lakes, streams, and wetlands. However, the tablelands are mainly with sagebrush plains, and a lot of sagebrush is found all over the area. While the flora of Grand Teton National Park is generally healthy, the white bark pine, and to a lesser extent the lodgepole, are considered at risk. And the reason being, of course, is the invasive species of fungus known as white pine blister rust. And that weakens the tree and making it more susceptible to destruction from the endemic mountain pine beetles. White bark mainly thrive around 8,000 feet and produce large seeds that are high in fat content, and an important food source for animals like grizzly bears, red squirrels, and Clark's nutcrackers. So as a result, this white bark pine is actually a keystone species. So as a result, that is pretty important to protect. And of course, in terms of fauna, there's 61 species of mammals found in the park. This includes the gray wolf, which was once extirpated from the park in the 1900s, however, was reintroduced, but was migrating to Grand Teton from Yellowstone after the species was introduced there. And the reestablishment of wolves ensured that every indigenous mammal species now exists in the park. In addition to wolves, you can also find the American black bear, coyote, river otter, marten, badgers, as well as cougar, lynx, and wolverines are found here at the carnivore species. You can find a number of rodents, from marmots to chipmunks, of course the muskrat, and of course the beaver lives here too, as well as the porcupine. Of course, the most common large mammal in the park are elk, and they exist in the thousands all over the park. And their migration route between the National Elk Refuge and Yellowstone is through Grand Teton, so you can see any time of the year, but most commonly in spring and fall. The other ungulates in the park are moose, bison, and pronghorn. The moose tend to stay near the waterways and wetlands, and you also find the bighorn sheep in the alpine rocky zones. In terms of birds, there are about 300 species of birds sighted in the park, including the smallest bird species in mainland North America, the Calote hummingbird, as well as the North America's largest waterfowl, the trumpeter swan. You can find other waterfowl like blue-winged teal, American widgeon, and the harlequin duck. Multiple birds of prey species have been found here around the national park, including both bald and gold eagles as well as owls, including the most common being the great horned owl, which is the most common owl spotted at the park. So tons of different bird species. Of course, one really interesting thing is the Snake River fine spotted cutthroat trout is the only native trout species here at the park, and is the only subspecies that is exclusively native to large streams and rivers. Other non-native species like rainbow trout and lake trout were introduced by the Wyoming Fish and Game Department. So, pretty important stuff here too. But yeah, quite a few wild animal species here can be found here in the park. So lots of native wildlife and animals found here too. So that concludes the slides for this first part, obviously. Of course, we have one more slide available to us, of course. And we have one last slide to cover before we get into the national park itself. And our last slide is the recreation at Grand Teton. So Grand Teton has a lot of very important things. Grand Teton is very popular with a lot of mountain climbing. For mountain and rock climbers, due to the mountains being extremely accessible by road. Trails are well marked, and routes to the summit of most peaks have been long established, and for the experienced and fit, most peaks can even be climbed within a day. The highest maintained trails climb from the floor of Jackson Hole over 4,000 feet to mountain passes. And from those, the climbs follow routes that require various skill levels. Around 4,000 climbers a year tip to make the summit of Grand Teton, and most ascend up through Garnet Canyon. Making it very popular for a lot of rock climbing. In addition to this, it's also a very popular trailing. It's incredibly popular for trails. In addition to, it has over 200 miles of hiking trails from easy to strenuous. Some of the easiest ones are located here in the valley, like the Hermitage Point Trail, which is around 9 miles long, pretty easy hikes. Other ones include the Valley Trail, which circles around from Trapper Lake to Teton Village, and of course the Jenny Lake Trail, which circles around the entire lake. However, you also have some tougher trails you can do. And one of the more popular ones, of course, is Cascade Canyon Trail, which is a very popular one, about 13 miles, but you have some insane views. Of course. In addition, this park is actually also well known for boating, surprisingly. Despite being inland, there is actually pretty popular boating. And Grand Teton National Park allows boating in all lakes in Jackson Hole, but motorized boats can only be used in Jackson and Jenny Lakes. Jenny Lake is only restricted to 10 horsepower. So, yes, it's using for boating. And it also has some fishing activities, too. Of course, in the winter, visitors are allowed to do snowshoe and cross-country skiing and are not restricted to the trails either, as Grand Teton Park Road is closed to vehicle traffic. So don't worry about the winter stuff. However, there is only one place where snowmobiles are permitted, and that is Jackson Lake when it freezes over the years. So that concludes all the different stuff here at Grand Teton National Park. Now, I'm going to briefly go over some of the important trails of the park, so I'm going to do something pretty short. Let me... No. So let's do Grand Teton. Here we go. Grand Teton. So these are some of the most popular trails in the park. So there's the park right here. So these are all the trails you can find here. And if we go here, we could do the top 10 best trails at Grand Teton. And speaking of Grand Teton, we'll briefly do this. Boom. We'll briefly lock into place, so we'll change it back later. So this is 31 of 60, so here's some of the popular trails in the park. These are the top trails, of course. However, some of these trails are closed, by the way. So currently you can do the Phelps Lake one, but these are not the most popular lakes of the trail. So one of the most popular trails and one of the more difficult one, but very popular one, is of course Jenny Lake Trail, which is sadly closed. But here's some of the really popular ones in the park that are closed. So these are 3 very popular lakes that are closed. But let's take a look at some of them that are closed. First one is Jenny Lake Trail. This is a very popular one. And you get some phenomenal views of Jenny Lake. Very popular one. And there's tons of pictures. Of course, it is closed. But let's look at some of the pictures they got here. This is from Jenny Lake. So here's some of the pictures from Jenny Lake. I mean, look at the views. Just absolutely incredible views of the natural scenery here. It's absolutely gorgeous, of course. Absolutely gorgeous views of the park. Got to see tons of great scenery here. This one was from 6 days ago. I mean, look at that with the snow and all that. I mean, look how crazy that is with the snow. That's just gorgeous. Unbelievably pretty. So 7 days ago. I mean, some of these pictures look absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. Some of these people even got pictures of the animals. Jenny Lake's very popular. This one is one of the more difficult ones, but this is Cascade Canyon. This one, you go in through Jenny Lake at the Inspiration Point, but you turn left through all of it. And you get Cascade Canyon Trail. This one is a really special one. But look at some of these pictures from Cascade Canyon. Look at the state of that. Now that is absolutely breathtaking, if you say so yourself. Absolutely gorgeous park. Absolutely gorgeous trails all throughout the park. Cascade Canyon. And here it is, Lake Solitude via Cascade Canyon. It's crazy how much this looks. There's Delta Lake through up here, which is very difficult. It's a hard trail, but your reward is this lake right here. Is this beauty of a lake. And finally, the Taggart Lake Loop is the last lake we'll be covering here. And this one's very popular for its views of the Tetons, and it's a very family-friendly route. It's an easy route, but you have some absolutely insane views of the Tetons. I mean, even just a few days ago, some of the coastal trail, look at the views. Just absolutely insane. We might even park in the valley, too. If you guys want to, when we get to Jenny Lake, we might be able to park in Jenny Lake Overlook, and we take a look at Grand Teton from Jenny Lake. If you guys are interested and want to do that, we could park in the valley too and take a good look. So yeah, that would basically be what we're going to do. So let me just revert this back to where I had it. And we're going to go ahead and turn left. We'll turn left into So we're going to continue on. We're going to head over west to Alpine Airport for our next stop. So, but the scenery today is absolutely gorgeous. So, absolutely breathtaking scenery today, guys. I've been really enjoying this flight. So we'll land here briefly in Alpine, and then we'll do the other half of this trip. We'll make our way through Grand Teton National Park. And I'll be looking forward to this. But yeah, we're going to have plenty of bush lanes for this next leg, of course. So we'll get to Alpine Airport, and we'll make our landing at Alpine Airport. So guys, I hope you're enjoying this stream. If you want to follow along with the channel, we stream on Fridays and Sundays, of course. For next week, for our next week of streams, of course, for next week, of course, our next week's streams, next Sunday will be our next national park in the series, is Carlsbad Caverns National Park in New Mexico. So we'll be in Carlsbad Caverns for the next trip. So we're going to be heading down to Texas and New Mexico. And we'll be going down through Lubbock. We'll go from Lubbock to Hobbs, and then we'll explore Carlsbad Caverns, which I'm very excited to actually explore with you guys. I'm going to have a lot of fun here, of course. Looking forward to that being our next national park. And finally, on Sunday will be on Friday will be our next game day flight, and we'll be heading over to Scotland for this one. We got an epic battle for Scottish football. Old Firm, baby. Celtic and Rangers. One of the most bitter rivalries in European football, if not world football. I mean, two clubs, two completely different identities in one city. Yeah, this one's a very big one. And I'm going to be looking forward to this game, of course. There's going to be a lot of history between Old Firm, the history, and lots of history, boys. And there will be lots to talk about when we get to talk about Celtic and Rangers, man. This is going to be a very big one. And I'm looking forward to that one. This is going to be an epic one. Look at that airport. Look how beautiful this is. This is actually from the outbanks of the Snake River. So this is one of the reservoirs in the Snake River, of course. But this is an absolutely gorgeous airport. So we'll make our landing here at Alpine. There we go. And we'll just look how beautiful that is. That's just nice. So there it is, guys. We'll just stay here for about a little bit. We'll get ready for the next leg very shortly, of course. Some pretty cool stuff, of course, will be waiting here. Now, one interesting thing, though, I do want to talk about Jackson Hole is the airport. So the crazy thing about Jackson Hole Airport, of course, is it's actually Wyoming. It was the busiest airport in Wyoming. This past year was 1.16 million people flew into Jackson Hole. So pretty big stuff. And what's crazy is that this airport actually offers to more than 15 destinations all across the United States. It goes West Coast, like LA, San Diego, San Francisco. It goes even as far east as to New York. Yes, as far south as Houston and as far east as New York. Which is pretty crazy to think about. It is how far it goes. And yes, this airport is still big enough. You could fit a 757 into this airport. 757-200 is the largest airport seen regularly at Jackson Hole. Yes, you can fit a 75 into there, which makes it pretty impressive, considering it. So we'll be ready to get going. Let's go ahead and get going for our next leg. We'll be climbing at around 11,500 feet. So we're going to go ahead and at 360-degree heading. So 11,500. $360, aka there. And we're up. And we're finally climbing up. So we'll finally make our way into the Jackson Hole area. Mm. Mm. So we'll make our way over to Grand Teton. So we're going to head over here. So we'll make our way over to the first leg. So we'll climb our way up. So I did post a link in the chat from Grand Teton National Park, so you have some more information about this park, of course, all the different things you can do here. Snake River is also very popular for floating. You can do floats through Snake River, which would be unbelievably scenic. You can take a national park scenic float. And you can take a scenic float trip around here, which would be really pretty, though. It would be unbelievably pretty. But the only issue about Grand Teton that I don't like is Jackson Hole is very expensive. Jackson Hole is actually quite expensive. It's actually one of the most costly places to live and to vacation here in the country. It's actually very expensive. So it's actually very expensive for housing, which is a real shame because I would love to visit Jackson, Wyoming, in the Jacksonville region. I would love to visit. So that's something else to keep in mind for all you guys thinking about. It's not cheap to go in this area at all. So we're about to arrive into the Grand Teton area. So I'm going to change the weather briefly just to change them. So this is what this area looks like in April. So we'll keep to February, keep it to the same time. So let's talk about some of the stuff heading to Grand Teton. We're about to head to Grand Teton. So let's cover some of the slides pretty quickly while we get our way here. Grand Teton's actually the highest mountain in the Teton Range at 13,775 feet in northwest Wyoming. Below the north face is Teton Glacier, and this mountain is a classic destination in American mountaineering via the old Owen Spalding route. This area is actually also the second highest peak in the state of Wyoming, only trailing Gannett Peak. Now the mountain began its uplift around 9 million years ago during the Miocene. Several periods of glaciation have carved Grand Teton and other peaks in the range to their current shapes. And the name Grand Teton has actually been around since as Mount Hayden. It was originally called Mount Hayden in 1870 by the Washburn-Langford Domain Expedition. However, Grand Teton, its name actually translates to large teat or large breast in French, because it was named by the French Canadian or Iroquois members of an expedition of the Northwest Company. But of course, there's been disagreement in who first climbed Mount Teton. Both Nathaniel Langford and J. Stevenson claimed to have reached the summit in 1872 as part of the Hayden Geological Survey in 1871. A part organized by William O. Owen also claimed it when he did it in 1898. Ultimately, however, there is very little proof. Ultimately, the first ascent was mainly done by Owen. And apparently it was actually William O. Owen who first climbed Grand Teton. So there are multiple really popular routes to climb up the mountain, mainly through the Owen Spalding route, is the most popular way to climb up the mountain. It's also well known for being ski and snowboard descents from Grand Teton as well. And this area has been skied on, and even in 2024, someone even ran up and down the mountain in 2 hours, 50 minutes, and 10 seconds. So yes, someone actually ran up and down Grand Teton. Who knew? Then, of course, next to it is Cascade Canyon, which is located here at the park. Cascade Canyon was formed on glaciers that retreated during the 15,000 years ago. Today, Cascade Canyon has numerous polished glacial erratics, hanging cirques, and a U-shape as evidence that these areas were once filled by glaciers. Around 2,000 feet deep. The canyon's west of Jay Lake, and the Cascade Canyon Trail follows the length of the canyon and is one of the most heavily used hiking trails in the park. In 5 miles west, you can find the Cascade Canyon Barn being preserved that was built in 1935. So really cool stuff. Cascade Canyon's really pretty, and you can hike in that trail. Pretty cool stuff. Our second last slide, of course, is Mount Moran, the second highest peak in the park. Mount Moran is around 12,610 feet above sea level and rises 6,000 feet above Jackson Lake. Several active glaciers actually been around here. Now, of course, Mount Moran is a very impressive and massive impressive mountain that would make it attractive to mountaineers. However, it is actually less popular than Grand Teton due to its comparative difficulty of climbing up the mountain. It's actually more difficult to climb it up than the taller Grand Teton. Really interesting stuff as well. And there are several active glaciers exist in the mountain as well. One interesting thing to know about Mount Moran was that in 1950, a DC-3 that was actually owned by the New Tribes Mission, which is Evangelical Christian Mission, actually crashed on Mount Moran during a storm that killed all 21 on board. And the wreckage of the mountains and the wreckage of the plane crash still is here today, but the Park Service discourages climbs to the site. So yes, you can still see a plane crash up in Mount Moran. But yeah, there's Jackson too. To our right is Jackson and all that. That is to our right. So here's the city of Jackson and all that to our right. So here we go, guys. We'll climb up to 13,000 feet. So we'll see several important peaks as we climb our way to the top. So this is Grand Teton. Holy heck, this is a really cool park. Oh, what a cool area here. And it's going to be one heck of a view. So we'll check that out. We'll make our way to the beautiful National Park of Grand Teton. So we'll make a mountainside landing here at the peak of Grand Teton. So beautiful stuff. We can see the Jackson Hole Valley underneath. The last slide for today, we'll have one last slide to cover before we make our way to Grand Teton, is the Mormon Row Historic District. This historic district, by the way, is a historic district that's located in the National Historic Places, and the district consists of a line of homestead complexes along the Jackson-Moran Road near the southwest corner of Grand Teton called Jackson Hole. This valley contains several in construction of Andy Chambers Ranch, T.A. Moulton Barn, and John Moulton Barns from the 1908 to the 1950s. And these areas are very popular, and this area is also known as Antelope Flats. And situated between the towns of Booz and Kelly, and it's very popular for tourists and photographers due to the historic buildings, the herd of bison, and the Teton Range, making it very popular for a lot of photographs. We'll take a few photographs too from here too. Get our own version of the pictures, of course. So really cool stuff here as well. Absolutely gorgeous buildings. So that concludes our last slide for today. So happy to get that slide done. So here's Grand Teton. We see it right in the distance. And we'll make our first landing of our first bush landing of the day. We got a couple more planned. One at Inspiration Point. We'll make one at Inspiration Point, looking to the valley. Then we'll take, and then we'll do another bush landing. We'll do another landing at Molten Barn. So we'll do 3 of them today. We'll take plenty of pictures here at Grand Teton National Park. We'll take plenty of pictures. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So here we go, guys. Grand Teton. Ain't she a beaut in Grand Teton? Isn't she a beauty right here? Grand Teton, everyone. The tallest peak in the Teton range. So we'll make our landing here at Grand Teton. Let's see if we can even pull off like a thing. Do this here. Up to here. We'll just do the performance here. Oh man, what a view. Grand Teton, an absolutely gorgeous park. Here it goes, Grand Teton. If I fail, I fail. No, I'm gonna do my best. Well, thought I'd give it a try. Well, whoops. And yeah, we did it. We made it to Grand Teton. This is the very top of the national park. Oh boy, look at that for a view. So this is what it looks like in the Park Valley and all this. So you're at the top of Teton. I mean, just look at the scale of this place. My goodness gracious, that's gorgeous. And down below is Cascade Valley, of course. What a view. What a view, if you ask me. That is the state of that. So there you go, guys. So that is Grand Teton itself. And we're off. So that concludes Grand Teton. Oh boy. So we'll descend down over to Cascade Canyon, of course, into Jenny Lake. So we'll just descend slowly across all of it. So I can get much of this is Grand Teton. What a view! So we'll descend slowly across the canyon floor. Wait, that's Grand Teton. That's absolutely stunning. So this is Cascade Canyon, everyone. So look at that. That is. That is absolutely incredible. Absolutely insane scenery. Grand Teton is an absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and. And this is what Cascade Canyon looks like from the back. In the. So there's down below us is Inspiration Point. This is Jenny Lake, one of the beautiful lakes throughout the park. So there's J Lake. So here's Jackson Lake. So there it is, guys. Mount Moran. So there's Mount Moran. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's Mount Moran in the distance. Right here. So there's Mount Moran with Jackson Lake in the distance. So we're going to climb up to 12,000 feet. So into our west is Idaho in the distance. There is the distance. Hard to see all the glare. So we're gonna go ahead and descend down the. I'm gonna work on descending our way down to 8,000 feet. We'll make our way through Jackson Lake and all that. So beautiful areas here. Mount Rand and Grand Teton on the background, of course. Absolutely incredible places to fly. So we'll be making our way to meet Murphy. So we'll descend down. So we'll descend down to 8,000 feet. Here we go, and we're just about 8,000 feet. So here we are, guys. We're about to descend into Jackson Lake. So we finally did it. We're into Jackson Lake. Into that as well. So we'll turn right a bit as we enter Jackson Lake. So this is the most popular area for a lot of boating stuff. So here we go. We'll fly into Jackson Hole, and there it is, Jackson Lake. Isn't that absolutely gorgeous? Jackson Lake. We'll be flying into this direction for another 13 nautical miles. Then we make our way to Jackson Hole Valley. So we'll head down this way as well. But so in here we can see Mount Moran and Doane Peak to our right, and Moran's in the distance too. So we'll take a picture here of Jackson Lake with all the different peaks in there. Oh, isn't that a nice shot? Oh, isn't that a pretty shot? If I say so myself, this is absolutely just gorgeous scenery here at Jackson Hole. So, mm, mm. So we'll make our way through. But absolutely gorgeous. We're nearly there, and then once we visit the Cunningham cabin, we can turn left. We can turn left. We can turn right to Snake River, and then we'll head left to the Molten Barn. And we'll take a picture from the barn, of course. We'll get one with Grand Teton in the background. We'll try and get Grand Teton in the background for an absolutely amazing shot. So. So we'll be able to get there too. So we'll be here pretty shortly. So here's the JP Cunningham cabin coming up for next. Is down below us. Is the Cunningham cabin. I think that's right here. I think that's JP Cunningham cabin down here. So the Cunningham cabin's down below us. I think that's the little cabin. We'll turn left. So we're going to head down here into the valley. Yeah, look at that, though. What a view. Look at down here. Hey, we got a raid. Kaharia, my dear. I hope you're doing well, my dear. We're just about to wrap up. We're about very close to the last waypoint for our flight. We're here at beautiful Grand Teton National Park here in Wyoming today. We started our trip back in Logan, Utah. We crossed over into the Wyoming border and made our way into here. We did some really fun stuff so far. We actually got to land on top of Grand Teton, of course. Grand Teton, absolutely tall, 13,000 feet above sea level. One of the tallest, second tallest peak in the state of Wyoming, of course. We also visited Cascade Canyon, Jenny Lake, Mount Moran, and more. So that is what we're doing here today. Oh, you're more welcome to join on in, actually, Sir Dev. We're at the tail end, but you can join on in Jackson Hole. Would be our closest airport to where we're at right now. Is Jackson Hole Airport. We're going to make one final bush landing here soon, and that is at the famous, that's the famous J.T.A. Molten Barn. We'll make one last bush landing there, because we're going to take an epic photo of the barn, and the reason is this barn is very popular for photos. It's perfect for photo opportunities. So you guys are more welcome. I hope you had a great stream, Kaharia. I know there's been stuff. Hey, Tyler's Games. Good to see you, Tyler Gamer. I hope you're doing well, Tyler. Thank you so much for coming on in. I hope you guys. I'm doing very well, Kaharia. The stream's going very well today. So our bush landing is going to come right up. So we're doing great. I've really been enjoying Grand Teton. If you want, so here's what Grand Teton would look like during the spring and summer. It would look like this, which would be absolutely breathtaking, but I wanted to take a picture of it during the winter. But I wanted to keep it to February because, well, duh. So Mormon Row is a very popular area for photographs. Mormon Row is very famous for photographs, and that's why I wanted to do a bush landing here so I could take the photograph of the barn, Grand Teton, and the plane. I wanted to take some fun. Oh, my mic is mono. No worries. Hey, Tower Games, thank you so much. Let me take a look. Mono. Yeah, actually. I checked my settings. It's not mono. I checked my OBS settings. It's not mono setting. It's because this is a mic up here, so it sounds like mono, but it's not. It's not. I don't really have any of the nicer mics yet. I could get one in the future, but I haven't got me the opportunity to get me a new mic or something. So we'll actually land here. So we'll get ready to land at the barn. We'll get ready for that. So the TA Molten Barn is somewhere down here. Or at least what the barn would be located. Oh, hey, we have a ball. Nigel, oh my goodness, 2 raids today? Nigel, hello, my dude. Good to see you. If you guys don't know, I'm ViperStrike95. I stream here every Friday and Sunday here on Twitch. And we're here in Grand Teton National Park. We're doing our National Park series here on Twitch. Every Sundays, we explore all the national parks, of course. Captain Cocktail, thank you for the follow. I really appreciate it. So we are here in Grand Teton. We're going to take a photo opportunity here at the TA Molten Barn. This isn't the barn, but it's close enough. But this house is close enough to the famous house. So we'll take a picture. We'll park. Right here. We'll park right here. This is close enough. So in real life, this is a very popular photo opportunity here. So we'll take the plane, look at the house. I actually believe a better spot would actually be right here. So if you guys don't know, we got Nigel, first time chat, good to see you. Kev Sim Corner, good to have you, my dude. Henry 1707 and Wadsworth, excellent seeing you guys here today. I just trying to find a better location where we can park and explore the beautiful scenery. So this here is what would be the barn. So we're going to take a pretty epic photo. Boom. With Grand Teton right in the background. Of course, if you guys don't know about Grand Teton, this is the 18th national park in the United States in northwest Wyoming. Founded back in 1929. Very cool national park. It's actually one of the top 10 most visited parks in the United States. Last year was around 3.6 million people visited Grand Teton. Absolutely gorgeous park. You could do hiking. It's extremely popular for mountaineering, of course. Boating and fishing and all sorts. And of course, you can find all sorts of animals living here, especially elk. Mm-hmm. But guys, I hope you had a great stream, Nigel. I hope you had a great time with your community as well. I'm very happy to have you guys here today. So if you guys want to follow along, I have my own Discord. You guys can keep track of all my streams in my Discord. If you guys are welcome to join on in. On Fridays, we do another series, a sports-related series called Game Day Flights. We do around all the game day stuff across the world. And we did earlier, which was the North London Derby on Friday, and that was a lot of fun. We flew the south coast of England up to London. That was really fun. And if you guys are interested, next Friday we'll also remain in the United Kingdom, but we're going to go up to Scotland. We're going to check out the infamous Old Firm Derby, Rangers and Celtic. So we'll talk all about the history of it and each of the clubs representing the Derby. So really cool stuff. So that is what we're going to be doing next week. So let's get back in and conclude the stream. We'll wrap things up here as well. Got one last stop left to go. I'm going to go ahead and get out of the house. And we'll fly out of here. See, this is why I love the Sun Savage Norden, because she's an absolutely amazing bush plane. Amazing bush plane. This is easily one of my top favorite planes in Microsoft Flight Sim 2024. And if you guys aren't also aware, I've been streaming Flight Sim since 2021, back in MS7's 2020, actually. So I've been around for quite a bit. I did a DC-3 Around the World flight back in 2022-2023, which was a lot of fun. The Britling DC-3 flight was a lot of fun. Round trip from Geneva, a ton of fun. I did, and my most recent Fight Sim 2024 series, which was the 50 states in 50 streams. We got to cover all 50 U.S. states, and that was a lot of fun. Got to learn about each state, and we got to learn more about it, which I think was a lot of fun. So, really enjoyed being here with you guys today. I absolutely appreciate the support. You guys have been absolutely amazing. Also, here's my Discord if you guys want to follow along. But I do make notes every single stream. I always have a slideshow of notes for you guys, too. I know you guys just came here at the very end of the stream, but basically my notes, I have all the information from history to geography, geology, ecology, and all that for each of the national parks. So you guys now get to learn just about everything you want to know about national parks, of course. So at the end of the series on my Discord, I'll post the notes for each of the different stuff, and you guys can have all of it too. But really enjoyable stuff. So thank you all for everything. For the new 51st state. Good luck with that. Yeah, Nudge. That's a good one. I have to admit that one as well. But some people think Canada's going to be the 51st state. I don't buy that in 100 years. If I had to predict what would be the next state, it would probably be either Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico would probably be the most likely for a 51st state, if I'm being honest, Puerto Rico. But the process of even a new state is going to be extremely difficult, however. That takes a lot. That's going to take many, many, many years of government bureaucracy and all that to get through. So that's just how it is. It's going to take many, many years. So this is Jackson Hole Airport. We're about to land here. We'll turn off the plane stuff pretty soon. But if you guys don't know about Jackson Hole Airport, this is the only commercial airport in the country within a national park. You see, when this area, at the time, the land this was in was actually part of a national monument that was built in the 1930s. So this land that the airport was on was originally bought by John Rockefeller Jr. He bought this land. So when that became part of a national park, the airport was included in it. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. And because it's a national park, the noise abatement stuff is among the most strict in the US of A. Very strict noise requirements. Plus night curfew and all that too. So we'll park right here, guys, and we'll wrap up the stream. Thank you all so much. So we finally made it here at beautiful Grand Teton. Look at the view from the background, everyone. Grand Teton is a beauty of a national park. So we're gonna go ahead and head you guys over to my dear friend and an amazing guy himself, Teton Murphy. So we're gonna be saying hello to him and his channel. I hope you all have an amazing weekend, and I hope you guys get to enjoy soon. We'll be back on Friday in Scotland. So take care, everyone, and have a fantastic rest of the weekend. And thank you all for your support. Kaharia and 9-Speed, thank you for the raids. And see you all again soon. Take care, everyone. Goodbye, everyone.